What if I told you that after years of speculation, after endless headlines, after social media mobs declaring guilt by association, one of the loudest voices in media suddenly found her own name sitting inside the very documents she's discussed on air? Funny how that works, isn't it? A friend of mine calls it Indian justice. Be careful how you treat people because life has a way of circling back around. Well, this week on The View, that circle came around, and this time it stopped at Whoopi Goldberg. Let's talk about what actually happened and why context matters more than ever. So, here's what unfolded. On air, Ms. Goldberg addressed something that's been circulating online, her name appearing in the newly released Jeffrey Epstein files. In the name of transparency, she said, asking for the email to be put on the screen, my name is in the files. Here's her explanation.
Now, in the name of transparency, can you put up my name is in the files? Yes. I'm getting dragged. People actually believe that I was with him. It's like, honey, come on.
Yes. So in other words, anybody can be on this list.
Well, this is my point, because I'm telling you, when I tell you people are trying to turn me into, I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his friend.
You were too old for him.
I was not only too old, but it was at a time, where this is just not, you used to have facts before you said stuff.
Now, pause right there. For years, critics across the political spectrum have speculated about prominent names tied to Jeffrey Epstein. Social media has had a field day. Accusations have flown in every direction, especially towards Donald Trump. And now, Goldberg's name shows up in a 2013 email. The email references a flight to Monaco. It mentions that John Lennon's charity was paying for it and asks whether Epstein would provide his private plane. Now, according to Justice Department documents, Epstein replied with a very simple and misspelled no thanks. Goldberg clarified that it should have said Julian Lennon's charity, not John Lennon's, and she made another point very clearly. She never flew with him. In fact, she joked that she doesn't fly at all. Now, her co-host, Joey Behar, chimed in with something important. Just because a name appears in a document doesn't mean there was a relationship. It certainly doesn't mean wrongdoing. Oh, so now there's no guilt by association, like they have declared with Donald Trump all these years? It's okay? Just because your name appears in a file with Jeffrey Epstein doesn't mean you did anything wrong? Does that same standard apply to Donald Trump? Ms. Goldberg pushed back hard against online speculation. She says, I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't even his friend. People actually believe that I was with him. Like, honey, come on. Well, now, here's where the bigger picture comes in. This isn't just about one television personality, especially Whoopi Goldberg. This comes after the full public release of Epstein-related documents under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Legislation that was passed by Congress and, by the way, signed into law by President Trump. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that all files covered under Section 3 have now been released. Millions of files. More than 300 high-profile names appear in those documents, like, yes, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Prince Harry, Bill Gates, Woody Allen, Mark Zuckerberg, Bruce Springsteen. The list goes on and on. Hundreds and hundreds of people named in those files. Are they all guilty of doing something because their name is in a file related to Jeffrey Epstein? Look, that's politics. That includes people from the tech world. That's royalty. It's Hollywood. It's the music world. It is a very wide net of people who had some type of dealings over the years or was mentioned in an email like Whoopi Goldberg, but never had any contact. But here's the crucial language from the Attorney General's letter. There are individuals whose names appear at least once in the file. That gets you the grand distinction of being in the files. So let me repeat that in plain English. Appearance does not equal association. Association does not equal wrongdoing. And that's the nuance that disappears the second a screenshot hits social media. This is what transparency looks like. It's messy. It's incomplete. It invites interpretation before investigation. The law required release of names where they appear at least once. It doesn't categorize the type of mention. It doesn't rank involvement. It doesn't say this was a declined plane request versus this was a social event. It just discloses the names like the law said. And in a hypercharged political climate, disclosure instantly becomes accusation. For years, Epstein's connections have fueled speculation across ideological lines. Powerful people in finance, in academia, politics, entertainment. So when 300 names drop into public view, the internet does what the internet does. Headlines, assumptions, guilt by proximity. Goldberg's response was essentially an attempt to stop that narrative before it hardened. And regardless of where you fall politically, there's a principle here worth defending. Being named in a document connected to a criminal is not proof of guilt. That applies to everybody. It applies to Ms. Goldberg. It applies to Donald Trump. It applies to anyone whose name is in there unless they really were guilty of doing something. It's a starting point for an inquiry, not a conclusion. So let's circle back to what my friend calls Indian justice. Be careful how you treat people. Be careful how quickly you speculate, because sometimes the same standard you apply to others will eventually be applied to you as well. For years, public discourse around these files has been filled with insinuation. Now suddenly, some of the very people discussing them find their very own names in the mix. That's not a victory lap moment. That's a reminder moment. A reminder that truth requires patience. A reminder that transparency requires discernment. And a reminder that in today's climate, accusations can spread faster than facts, but facts still matter. We're likely going to see more public figures address their inclusion in these documents. There's going to be more headlines. There's going to be more debates, more political spin from every side. But here's the steady ground to stand on. Read carefully. Demand the evidence. Separate presence from proof. Transparency is healthy. Speculation without context is not. And a year already defined by political intensity, the last thing this country needs is more confusion layered on top of serious allegations. We'll keep watching. We'll keep reading. We'll keep focusing on facts, not frenzy. Take two. We'll keep watching. We'll keep reading. And we'll keep focusing on the facts, not the frenzy.